Welcome back to the Teske Brief. I'm your host, Steven Teske, retired judge. Now, if you've been following our bar card series, you know we've been tracking a quiet, desperate struggle behind the scenes of American power. It's a struggle for the very soul, I believe, of our legal institutions. We've talked about the line prosecutors walking away from the Department of Justice. We've talked about the intense pressure on lawyers to trade their ethical oaths for, well, quite frankly, political survival. But today, we reach the climax of this story. We are looking at a case so flagrant, an abuse of power so spectacular that it threatens to collapse the Department of Justice entirely. It is the story of a sitting president, a $10 billion lawsuit, and a backroom settlement that essentially allowed a man to negotiate with himself, pay off his allies with your tax dollars, by the way, and grant his own family permanent immunity from the law. And at the center of the storm is Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Now, stay tuned. This is the Teske Brief. And folks, we have lots to talk about. Welcome back. Now, to understand how we got here, we have to go back to January of 2026. Donald Trump, along with his eldest sons and the Trump Organization, filed a massive $10 billion lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Now, the hook for the lawsuit really was a real grievance, by the way, okay? I have to give President Trump this. You see, during Trump's first term, an IRS contractor named Charles Littlejohn unlawfully leaked Trump's tax returns to the press. Now, Littlejohn was caught, prosecuted by the Biden administration, and sentenced to 5 years in prison. But you see, Trump claimed the government still owed him billions in personal damages. Now, let's pause and look at this process, okay? You see, in a normal world, when a citizen sues a federal agency, the Department of Justice does its job. It mounts a vigorous, independent defense of the United States. In fact, as we now know, career IRS attorneys quietly compiled a 25-page memorandum detailing exactly why Trump's suit was legally meritless. It was filed way too late, and you cannot legally hold an entire agency liable for the rogue criminal actions of a single contractor. And look, the operative word here is contractor, because in basic, tort law, there's a distinction between an employee and a contractor, right? Contractors are not employees. This contractor didn't even work for the IRS, was contracted by the IRS, okay? Meaning that they are held, responsible for their own actions because they were a contractor. I mean, this is basic tort liability stuff, okay? It's really quite simple. But you know what? We're not even in a normal world anymore. Because to defend the IRS against Donald Trump, the Department of Justice would have to fight a sitting president who is technically, guess what? Their boss. And even worse, the Department of Justice was being run by Todd Blanche, who is the very man who just months earlier was operating as Trump's personal criminal defense attorney. Folks, this smells so bad, okay? I mean, come on. So in April, U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams homed in on this absurdity. And she asked a fundamental constitutional question. How can this lawsuit proceed when there are no adverse parties? You see, folks, in America, a court cannot hear a case unless there is a genuine adversarial dispute. The constitutional standard is called, and it's in the Constitution, case and controversy. You cannot sue yourself. Sensing that the judge was about to throw the case out, Trump's private lawyers pulled a fast one. they voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit, but they didn't walk away empty-handed. No, no. As documented in investigative reporting, in the title of that particular article in the New York Times was "Inside the Deal to Drop Trump's $10 billion suit against the IRS." Anyway, they found a tight-knit group of loyalist lawyers coordinated behind the scenes by this guy named Boris Epstein, okay, spelled differently than Jeffrey Epstein, but bypassed the court completely. They took the dismissed lawsuit and turned it into a private, out-of-court global settlement. Now, I want you to let that sink in for a moment, okay? They bypassed the judge, went behind closed doors, and settled a lawsuit in which the plaintiff and the defendant were essentially the same person. Trump versus Trump, okay? And what did this backroom settlement produce? Well, folks, it's a double-headed monster of corruption. First, they announced the creation of a $1.776 billion, 1776, you get it? $1 billion anti-weaponization fund. The name, of course, is a cynical marketing gimmick, right? Because we're coming up on the 250th, anniversary of the United States birth, all right? 1776, $1.776 billion. But the mechanics, folks, it's terrifying. This money is designed to flow from the Treasury Department's what's called judgment fund, a pot of taxpayer money meant for legitimate legal settlements, directly to Trump's political allies. You know, some of those political allies include the rioters who violently attacked the Capitol on January 6th, okay? I mean, the ones of which many of them were convicted. Many of them pled guilty. Some went to trial, found guilty by their peers in a jury, okay? And then, of course, were later pardoned, right?
I'll give you a boots on the ground update here in a few.
Multiple capital injuries! Multiple capital injuries! We're still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks. If I give this up, they're going to have direct access. At least it's capital we can defend. We got to hold what we have.
Take your pins off.
Yeah. The fuck?
Take your pins off.
Now we're getting news that many of them have now gone on to commit crimes, more crimes, serious crimes. Anyway, that's a story for another day, but I couldn't help but throwing that in there. Second, and perhaps most egregiously, Todd Blanche signed a highly controversial one-page addendum to the agreement. As detailed in an article titled "Audit Immunity for Trump Family Puts IRS in a Bind," this document granted Donald Trump, his eldest sons, and their businesses, now get this, blanket civil immunity forever from any audits or investigations regarding tax returns filed before the agreement. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could all walk around with a free get out of jail free card, right? Okay? Because that's really what this is in the game of Monopoly. All right? Folks, this isn't a settlement. This is a preemptive civil pardon. With the stroke of a pen, Todd Blanche unilaterally shut down years-long IRS audit in the Trump Chicago Tower losses, an audit that tax experts estimate could have cost the president more than $100 million. The motive was there, folks, $100 million. Now, the IRS chief executive signed the main fund agreement, but when it came to the tax immunity addendum, only one signature appeared. That is the one giving the Trumps immunity forever, and that signature was Todd Blanche's. Now, in fact, Treasury, now get this, Treasury General Counsel Brian Morrissey resigned in protest the very day before that document was made public, refusing to affix his name to a document that flatly violates federal laws prohibiting the executive branch from interfering with IRS audits. Now, I will tell you this, Brian Morrissey has integrity. Brian Morrissey is not stupid, okay? Which brings us back to the central theme of this entire series, and it's the bar card, or the license that we lawyers have, and we should be holding on to very dearly and protecting it, right? But I'm deeply perplexed by Todd Blanche. How does a highly experienced former federal prosecutor not understand that what he is doing is professional suicide, huh? I mean, as we explore in this other article written, and it was titled "Trump Just Pardoned Himself and His Family Forever," Blanche was acting as the president's private family lawyer while drawing a taxpayer check. I mean, get this. He's the plaintiff. Trump's the plaintiff. He's suing the IRS, who's represented by who? The U.S. Attorney's Office, headed by who? Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche, who used to represent Donald Trump as his personal attorney. Okay? And now, based on the way things are going down, there is a very strong appearance that Blanche was operating on both sides. Both sides. Acting as Trump's attorney on one side, while representing the United States government, that is the IRS, on the other. Now, he signed a document that tax experts and former officials say flatly violates federal law. I mean, come on. Under the rules of professional conduct, I mean for us lawyers, for which, if we violate them, we can be disciplined, including being disbarred and our license taken away, our bar cards taken away. Specifically, Rule 1.7 and Rule 1.9. A lawyer is strictly prohibited from representing a client when there is a concurrent conflict of interest with a former client. Okay? Now, here he is representing Donald Trump. That is, well, the IRS, but Trump is the president of the United States, and the IRS works for Donald Trump. So here he is representing IRS and Trump. On the other hand, you know, Donald Trump was a former client. All right? So there's a clear conflict of interest here. Blanche represented Trump privately. Then he represented the government defending itself against Trump. Wow. Then he signed a deal that enriched and shielded Trump. It is a textbook open and shut violation of legal ethics, folks. There's no questions about this. We don't have to think hard about it. And then there's Rule 8.4, which defines professional misconduct as engaging in conduct that is prejudicial to the administration of justice. Now, folks, settling a lawsuit with yourself to hand out tax immunity and evade judicial review is the absolute definition of prejudicial to the administration of justice. Now, the editorial board at the New York Times, whether you like the New York Times or not, regardless of the fact of the matter is, they make a very good argument in this editorial titled "Todd Blanche is Unfit for Office." They wrote that Blanche has repeatedly violated the ethical oath, his ethical oath, including his written pledge to recuse himself from matters involving a former client. Todd Blanche may believe that his political patron can protect him, that Trump can protect him. And, you know, in the short term, maybe he can. But political appointments end, folks. Administrations fall. go out of office. Your bar card is your livelihood. It is your professional life. And once Todd Blanche is no longer in office, the political shield will vanish. The bar complaints will start coming. We'll proceed. And the independent state-level boards that govern the legal profession, which do not answer to the president, will do what the courts were blocked from doing. They will strip him of his license to practice law. And if Blanche thinks he can outrun this reality, he needs only look at the fate of his predecessor, Pam Bondi. In April of 2026, Donald Trump fired Bondi because she was not weaponizing the Department of Justice aggressively enough. She wasn't pursuing his political enemies with the raw, ruthless speed he demanded. So he replaced her with Todd Blanche, who immediately showed his loyalty by securing a highly frivolous, retributive criminal indictment against former FBI Director James Comey over a simple social media post. Anyway, let's look at what happened to Bondi the moment she was cast aside. You see, on May 27, 2026, a coalition of over, get this, 100 legal scholars, retired judges, and Peggy Quince, the retired Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court, filed a devastating 23-page ethics complaint against Bondi with the Florida bar, where Bondi is barred. Okay? They did not care that she once held the highest legal office in the land. They cited her for pattern misconduct, for bringing charges without probable cause, and for coercing subordinate Department of Justice lawyers to violate their ethical oaths. This is the lesson of the bar card. You can try to be the ultimate political loyalist. You can burn down the rules to please a boss. But political favor is fleeting. Trump will use you, and when you're no longer useful, he will discard you. And when he does, the state bar will be waiting for your license. Pam Bondi is finding that out right now. And you know what? I strongly believe Todd Blanche is next. So in our next episode, we're going to look at how the rest of the system fought back. We'll look at the furious bipartisan revolt on Capitol Hill, where even Senate Republicans looked at the deal in scornful disbelief. We'll look at the sham precedent Blanche tried to use to justify this slush fund. And we'll examine the tragic, systemic hollowing out of the Department of Justice, which has lost more than 20% of its veteran lawyers, because honorable men and women refuse to trade their bar cards for political obedience. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Teske Brief. But please, as we leave here, ask yourself this. If we allow our nation's chief law enforcement officers to burn their professional ethics to serve a temporary king, what happens to the rule of law? And that is what we're going to talk about the next time on the Teske Brief. Until then, be safe, take care. Goodbye.